Hello everyone, welcome back for another Star Trek Starships collection review. I have the special issue, the USS Enterprise NCC-1701, also known as the Discoprise, from Star Trek Discovery. And I've had this thing for about a couple of months now, really since this late December. And I got the ship as a late Christmas present. And the ship came first, or the model came first, and the magazine just came probably about a week or so ago because I guess they were out of stock. So now that I have both pieces of the puzzle, I'm now going to share it with you. So now, without further ado, I'm going to jump right into it. Okay, so there it is, the USS Enterprise NCC-1701 special issue. Pretty neat image of the ship on the cover there. And some information down at the bottom. Considered Constitution class, launched in 2245, 442.06 meters long, which is nearly twice as big as the original Enterprise. And of course, at this point in time, it's captained by Christopher Pike. And just like every other magazine in the collection, it shows you how to mount the model to the stand here on my right. And of course, you have some more information here. So once again, it is considered Constitution class. It was constructed San Francisco Fleet Yards, of course, and launched 2245. Captain Christopher Pike has phasers and photon torpedoes. And you have a pretty cool image of the ship there, which is very nice. Nice big splash centerfold looking image there, and brief little text about it. I'm assuming just based on its history, or based on its only appearance in the last episode of the first season of Star Trek Discovery and the first episode of season 2. And then of course it jumps right into the designing process of this ship, and some interesting things in here. And of course, this design was highly controversial, mostly because if this is supposed to be in the prime timeline or the original Star Trek timeline, why does it look like this? So there are several theories kind of going around. And I honestly, if you can fact check me on this, please do so. But to my knowledge, from what I understand, it had something to do with the split between CBS, Paramount, Viacom, whatever. And so the mandate was that Trek things would be 25% different than the original in order to avoid any kind of copyright infringement. So, of course, the Enterprise had to be redesigned slightly from Matt Jeffries' original design. And I have to say the design is not bad. It kind of shows some lineage between the NX-01 to that point in time, so I guess that's the real world reason why it looks different. And I guess another possible reason is just producers just did it because they could, or because they wanted to be different for no reason, to kind of have their own stamp, their own mark on this historical thing. And I guess as far as the in-universe reason, if this is indeed the original Star Trek timeline that spans the original series, Next Generation, DS9, Voyager, and then finally going back to Enterprise. If this is that same universe, then it's possible that at some point in this ship's future, before James T. Kirk takes it over, that the Enterprise will undergo another refit to be returned to its original self. I guess it could be argued that because of the outbreak of this Klingon war or whatever that Discovery has been showcasing in the first season, that maybe the Enterprise was retrofitted, refitted to be bulkier, bigger, meaner looking or whatever after the events of the Cage. So, and I guess at some point it goes back and undergoes a huge refit to go back to its original style that everyone knows and loves. It would be nice if that's actually explained on screen at some point, because then that would make things make sense, and then it could totally be fine with the design. It could just be another version of the ship. Anyway, so you turn the page and you see a lot of concept drawings or whatnot showing what the thought processes were in the various attempts to make it look as close to the original as possible, but different at the same time. So, yeah. And then, of course, you have more on that imagery there and the history text there. And more imagery and text. And more imagery and text. Now, it's interesting that this showcases the nacelles, especially here. Anyone who watches Star Trek Discovery and anybody who's been a huge Star Trek fan, at least of the ships or whatnot, knows that one of the biggest things that have come up is why aren't the warp nacelles on all of the Starfleet ships cylindrical with the spinning Bizarre collectors or warp coils or whatnot? And I guess the real world reason is that the producers didn't want that. They were told John Eves and others to just not do it. And I guess now that this whole CBS Paramount Viacom split thing has happened and may eventually come back together at some point in the near future, as a result, there were certain things that they could and could not use or whatever. So they had to make some changes. But in the meantime, it seems like maybe tensions are kind of thawing a little bit because the original Enterprise now has its original cylindrical looking nacelles back, complete with spinning warp coils. So that was cool. And I especially like the drawings on this page because you really get some close-up shots that you don't get to see in the actual episode so far, especially that like rear docking port area, which is interesting. There's some elements from the refit later on in its life from the motion picture that you can see kind of thrown in there. So that's kind of an interesting take. And so yeah, and turn the page and there's more on that. Of course, there's a screen cap. Otherwise, it's also a promotional shot from the episode itself. And that pretty much concludes the magazine. There's nothing else to it. And it ends, of course, with an image of the ship back here on the cover. So yeah, that's the XL edition. This is the extra large version of the ship. And apparently, as part of the Star Trek Discovery Starships collection coming down the line in a couple of months, maybe a month from now, will be the smaller version of this USS Enterprise. So essentially, we'll be getting two. So that'll be interesting to see, to compare details or whatnot. So yeah. And now, without further ado, I'm going to get to the model itself. All right, and there she is. It's a pretty nice model. To be honest, I was actually looking forward to this. Again, the design of this ship looks far better as far as being a redesign than the J.J. Abrams crap. And this ship is just, this model is just fantastic. You can see the registry is pretty crisp there, although the one kind of seems to be in between a panel line or Aztecing, but that's not too bad, I guess. A lot of detail here. Of course, the bridge dome is white, and the nacelles are orange here, the front. And of course, you have your round cylindrical nacelles, as I said. You have your original Starfleet NCC-1701 font there. Same thing as on the secondary hull here, so that's kind of cool. And of course, the rear of the nacelles have those little spots in them, if you can kind of barely see them. Yeah, they're there. Just like the original Enterprise. But I would have to say that the biggest difference between this and the original Enterprise is that the nacelle struts are more slanted back, as they would eventually become on the movie era refit. And of course, the neck between the saucer section and the secondary hull is thicker and smaller. The deflector dish pretty much remains unchanged. And the shuttle bay is pretty much the same, but now it has like this extra landing portion here, which is interesting. And the impulse engines back here are much bigger. than they are in TOS. But again, this thing is probably going to undergo another refit at some point. And on the inside of the nacelles, you can see the clear blue, which is always nice to see. And of course, I just also want to point out the space in between the nacelle struts. And just looking at this thing on the camera, this model is huge. Fits in my hand about that much. Of course, this is an extra large, the larger version. That will run you about $74, give or take. It's worth it. Again, I may not be necessarily a fan of what they're doing on Discovery, but the ships have been kind of on par, almost. And this is not a bad redesign, as long as there's an in-universe explanation for it. Because ultimately, well, for the last 50 years, the Enterprise has always been the original Matt Jeffries design. So maybe that will come. I hope so. I know they've made some kind of comments on the show itself saying that the blasted hollow technology and all the other kind of stuff is wreaking havoc on the ship's systems or whatnot. So, you know, maybe that's just the first of many throwaway lines that will explain that these refit changes during the Klingon War era or the Discovery era were basically a bunch of crap, so they yanked it all out and put the original components back in, which is why it looks the way it does from TOS onwards. So anyway, this is a very, very nice model. It's mostly metal. The bottom of the secondary hull is plastic, and you can actually see the two lines, the join line there, that they actually use to put the two pieces together. The registry is underneath there, just like on the original Enterprise, including these two marks there, which is nice. The bottom of the saucer looks pretty cool too. Looks very nice. A lot of panel lines, details, Aztecing, and you can see the neck is thicker. The nacelles, of course, are plastic. So be careful if you have this model or plan on getting it, when you take it out of the box, be careful because the nacelles are very plastic and delicate. And even if your model comes with one of them off, it's very easy to just kind of glue them back together. Mine was in one piece, fortunately. But as you can see, there's like a groove that goes inside the underside of the nacelle, so it should be very easy to put back together if one of them is loose. And it looks nice. I would recommend to anybody getting the ship. It's quite heavy and definitely worth it, and definitely worth the hype. And my nacelles don't appear to be misaligned or wonky or anything, so everything seems to be in order. So yeah, it's definitely worth getting, and I would highly recommend that if anybody's interested. I can't say the same about the show itself, but that's a whole other topic. But here's hoping that I hope that it has a turnaround, because I want it to succeed and I want to like it. So anyway, that is the USS Enterprise, the Discovery version or the Disco version, depending on your preference there. Yes, very neat, very cool, very clean. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop it down below. Again, please feel free to also fact check me on anything that I've said regarding the redesigning of the ship and the whole CBS Paramount Viacom thing going on. I don't know if that's really true or if it's just theories. But if it is, it would also explain a lot of the things that have happened and why Discovery in general looks at such a far departure from the Star Trek that we've all grown to love. And of course it has its fans, and they're entitled to do so, entitled to like it. But I hope that it returns more to a familiar look that I'm used to. So anyway, now I'm going to be quiet and show you what this thing looks like on its stand. So until next time, live long and prosper.